Hi everyone, welcome back to John's Briefs, again with Tim Forshey, the barrister extraordinaire. And extraordinary.
That means, what's that mean? It means uncommon?
Yeah, outstanding.
Outstanding? All right. Okay. All right.
You
Thank
take
you, buddy.
that?
I don't know. That's not what my family calls me, so I'm always curious about that. So
Give Tim some props, by the way. Have you guys noticed this guy has been working on his physical health a bunch, and look at him, he looks great, doesn't he?
Long way from great. Less
Healthy.
crappy. I'll take less crappy any day of the week. So.
Do you feel good?
Better, yeah.
Good.
As you know, I had my knees replaced, so I made a commitment to lose weight before I did that, so I wouldn't ruin the next set as well.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm trying to work out a little bit.
We've both been doing. We're down here between the two of us about 150 pounds.
Yeah, I always forget to tell you that too.
Yeah, easy day.
In my brain, I'm still a college football player, and it turns out it's not the guy in the mirror
It's not
anymore.
that
So
guy.
you got to acknowledge this.
So we had one on the channel not long ago of an Argentinian off-duty female cop who got down on a couple of moto robbers. She handled her business, got them both. But of course, I didn't see a gun on either one of those. And you've heard me talk with Stephanie and with Carrie recently about, we've said this thing, women get a lot more leeway in the use of force than men. Steph and Carrie, man, they've seen some cases recently. They haven't gotten near as much deference as what I would have said before. So I want to talk to Tim about whether in his experience, women get more deference than men in the use of deadly force. To win the fight after the fight, you need help. After a use of force, I trust Firearms Legal Protection to help me win the fight for the rest of my life. From their 24/7 attorney-answered hotline to coverage for the use of all legal tools, Firearms Legal Protection has you covered. Get a discount by signing up at the link below. So I think that's an interesting one that we kind of see here in the beginning, Tim, that two dudes on a moto in Argentina. Argentina, Brazil, Central America, as a general rule, is an armed robbery, right? That's not the case.
And she's a cop, so we have to assume she knows that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's probably well known by everybody, but it's clearly known by police officers.
Yeah. And two dudes on a moto in Thailand is an everyday event.
Yeah, eight dudes on a moto in Thailand. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
With groceries stacked up on top of that, right?
Kigali, Rwanda, the most people I've ever seen on a little 175cc Enduro, I literally saw 9 people. Dude, I'm not kidding, Tim. Dude
Astounding.
had a love seat strapped to the back of a 175cc Enduro with like ratchet straps.
God bless him.
And had a whole family back there.
All right. You do what you gotta
rolling
do,
down
right?
the road, man. Not joking. So in other places.
Wow. The combustion engine.
Oh gosh.
Modern miracle.
Not a thing, but in Central and South America, two dudes on a moto is a prelude to an armed robbery. So I think that maybe in that case, anyone, a man too would have been like, no, man, dude jumped off the moto like that after two dudes rolling up on me on a moto. I was sure he was gonna rob me and hurt me, so I shot him. But as she's a woman, do you think she gets a little extra leeway?
In my experience, yes. The most vivid example of that, I had a small frame female client that got involved in a lethal force situation, and we got the charges dropped, and she committed suicide about 3 days later.
Oh God,
it's
terrible.
one of the ones that always sticks with me. It's horrible. But so that one, I always think about that. But what we're really talking about is disparity of force, which of course John is one of the best people to explain that, and he's explained it countless times. But for those of you that just tuned in, really quick, so disparity of force can be measured or accounted for in a multitude of ways. So large versus small, many versus few, old versus young, male versus female, right?
Armed versus unarmed.
Armed versus unarmed. For you feminists out there, I apologize if that sounds misogynistic. I have 3 daughters. I'm not a misogynist. But the average male is going to be bigger and stronger than the average female. And I'm talking about biological sex here. I'm not talking about preference of gender. The average male is going to be bigger and stronger than the average female. As a result of that, there's an inherent disparity of force. Now, I watched Game of Thrones, and Brienne was that 6'3" Amazon warrior, and by golly, I dated a woman in law school that I think could kick my butt. She was a basketball player at Michigan State. She was an Amazon. But those are the exceptions. Most of the time, the disparity of force is going to favor the woman. So just because you're a woman, if you're 6'3" and you stomp the crap out of a 5'2", 118-pound weakling guy, the disparity of force is going to favor the guy.
Right.
So again, like we say a lot of times in law, it's a rebuttable presumption. But the presumption is that a woman is going to be more vulnerable than the man. So that factors into disparity of force. So if you're asking me just a generic question, do women get deference? With all those caveats, the answer would be yes. I've seen it, and I believe it is true.
Yeah, and I think, so it's big versus small is the first part of that.
And if you think about it, that's what we're talking about when we talk about gender. It's big versus small, strong versus weak.
Strong, so there's the two things. So big versus small, because your average male is bigger than your average female, right? So that's just a biological fact, right? So we can't get away from that.
Right.
So I am kind of an average dude. I am 5'10" and I'm like 205 pounds. That pretty average. In fact, actually, by the FAA standards, I'm kind of like the average American male now, 5'10" and 205. The average woman is not 5'10" and 205. It's just as simple as that, okay? So we have a size disparity. And also a strength disparity because testosterone is a hell of a drug.
Correct.
And that just is what it is. Now, the one that I like to use, you say, okay, you dated an Amazon woman. There's a very famous MMA fighter and jiu-jitsuka in the world today, and her name is Gabby Garcia.
Yeah.
Gabby is taller than I am. I believe she's 5'11", and she outweighs me by about 10 pounds, and she is, okay, just muff your ears for a second if bad words offend you, okay? Because she is built like a brick shit house, okay? She is.
Commodores sang about her, I believe.
Yes,
so, yes,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, she is yoked.
Yeah.
And Gabby Garcia could probably beat me like a rented mule, okay? And I'm a pretty tough guy, but Gabby could beat me up like, you know, like I owed her money, okay? And so is Gabby gonna get that deference of John attacked her, and so she, you know, she's a woman, John's a man, and because John's a man, he's bigger and stronger than her. Well, I'm not bigger and stronger than her.
It's a rebuttable presumption.
It's a rebuttable presumption.
Correct.
Now, Carrie and Steph have got several cases, and I guess as expert witnesses, we get called in on cases that are a mess by definition.
Correct. They're already bad. Yeah.
That the cops involved in those cases just wouldn't even consider that it was self-defense, even though it was very clearly that way. And as a woman, small women, like, you know, I mean, like my wife is 5'2" and 100 and nothing pounds, you know, and you're like, dude, almost any man of average size or above has her far outweighed and far out strength.
Right.
And so is it likely if a male attacks her even with his fists that he's going to put her in the hospital?
Right.
Yeah, I think as a default rebuttable presumption, yes. But it can be rebutted.
Yep.
Doesn't mean you won't get prosecuted necessarily.
Right.
But if we put it in front of the jury, you know, this is why hopefully we get a good expert that can come in and talk to the DA and go, man, these are all the factors involved here. But it's never cut and dried.
No, I mean, again, a case that I think you and I would have thought would have been cut and dried that everybody's familiar with is Kyle Rittenhouse.
Yeah.
We guessed wrong. $3 million in legal fees.
$3 million.
Right? The jury deliberated, less than an hour? I mean, but I guessed wrong on that one. He got prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Yeah. By the world's worst prosecutor.
Should never have been prosecuted. Thomas Binger should have been disbarred for that.
Prosecutor should have been charged with aggravated assault and disbarred, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, for pointing the gun at the jury.
Correct, yeah.
I also think you go back to the earlier famous one, George Zimmerman should never have been prosecuted.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree.
You know,
and in fact, originally he wasn't. They turned it down until it became political.
Turned into a political
NBC News got a hold of it, and there you go.
Yeah, and should never have been prosecuted for his self-defense incident against Trayvon Martin. But it can, okay? Yeah. So ladies, hear me on this. Do you get some deference? You do. You're generally gonna get some deference. Shoot, man, I've seen it go so far. I remember a case, I wasn't involved in it as an expert witness, but a woman who was a pastor's wife who he abused her for years and years and years. And she shot him with a shotgun while he was sleeping in bed and ended up getting away with it. Yeah. Like they
Well, we now call that the burning bed defense, and there are states that have statutorily codified that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's like a constant history of abuse, and it's self-defense. It might not have been imminent, but in this particular case, it's hard to do it when it's imminent. So.
Right.
And that's pretty scary as a guy who sleeps next to a woman. That, you know, don't make them too mad, I guess. So.
That's it. Good night, Wesley. Yeah. Good work. Almost like the killing
it's like that old Richard Pryor thing. You can go to sleep. You can go to sleep.
Oh, geez. I tell my wife all the time, I love you. You're my best friend. Please be nice.
Make sure the knives are locked up in the drawer. Yeah. Good to go.
She unfortunately has access to all the guns in the house, but so be nice. So yes, ladies, you're gonna get some deference. Now, that also means, I think I was raised in a time, and I see some pushback on this on the internet, you know, with equal rights and all this and that. But I was raised never to put my hands on a woman.
Absolutely.
I mean, I was just raised, you just don't do that.
Yep.
I could tell a story about my grandfather reinforcing that to me in somebody else's life. We had a guy that worked for us that his wife dropped him off to work and she had a black eye, and my grandpa beat that man like a rented mule. I'm not joking. This is the early 90s. Late 80s actually, and construction site, so a little rough, you know, around the edges. And I mean, my grandpa was a tough guy, and he also did 3 years for attempted murder when I was a kid. So, you know, he's not exactly an upstanding moral individual. I loved him deeply though, and he beat that man up, and then told him to get to work and said, "You ever put your hands on your wife again, I'll give you 3 times as much." And that guy worked for us for another like 8 months, and I never put his hands on his wife again. And that was, I got back in the truck with my grandpa afterwards, and I was like, Grandpa, what was that all about? He goes, no, the man shouldn't put his hands on his wife ever, period, full stop.
Carrot and stick. Yeah, that was stick.
And that was stick. And I'm not saying that was the best choice. I'm just saying that's a little old school way of doing things, right? So fellas, of course, adults use words. We don't use force to enforce our opinions, right? And as somebody who follows Jesus, my mission is to love my wife like Jesus loves his church, and I don't think he would ever put his hands on his bride. So, anyway, there's all that stuff. But do ladies get some deference? Some.
Here we had 2 against 1, male against female, and her knowledge of the fact that that's a precursor to an armed robbery. Yeah. So if I'm a prosecutor and I hear all that, I'm not going to charge that woman. And it sounds like somebody had the same good sense in Argentina to follow suit. So.
And what I hear here is multiple factor disparity.
Correct. Where you have one factor, man, you're putting your hopes on a pretty thin thread. But here, that thread's been macramated into a pretty decent cord, I think. So,
So if you have more than one factor, now ladies kind of defaulty get male versus female, large versus small. So you kind of have baked in a kind of a presumption of 2. But not always. For everyone else, hey, wait a minute. Yeah, it's a male versus a male, and it was a fist fight, but he got a buddy. So now I've got numbers and strength against me, because those 2 can overpower me together. Okay, now we're talking, we've got multiple factor disparity here. We can start to think about things. When you got multiple factor disparity, you're much safer environment.
Absolutely, yeah.
Single factor disparity, probably you're in trouble here.
If that's all we got to argue, we're going to argue the hell out of it. But it's sure nice to have a couple of other factors, that's for sure.
Yeah. So some deference, and I am going to challenge now. Stephanie and Carrie, you get to make a Stephanie and Carrie's briefs.
A rebuttal.
A rebuttal about what you've experienced in your cases and how that affects things, and then school Tim and I on how that
I was going to say, I want to watch that because I want to learn it too. So you bet.
Thanks for the input,
Always,
man.
buddy. Thank you.